I don't have any quotes, but I was listening to Will Hess and listening to my friends earlier, and they're like wanting to destroy penal substitution so harshly, which I have sensitivity for that. Some of the things they start to say, which I don't have any quotes. I wanted to get my thoughts from my perspective, and so I can understand people better. I have such a hard time wrapping my head around all this, and I've been thinking about it for a long time. And I'm like, find myself agreeing with somebody, and then they say something, and I'm like, no, that's not right. That doesn't seem right to me. Oops. So it seems like people start denying penal substitution to such a degree that they're like, oh, Jesus' death didn't do anything. It's like, that doesn't seem right to me. But I don't think they're really trying to say that. But it's like, whatever's happening, it seems like Jesus is actively doing something in heaven, which is involved with being typology. It's like, dude, Jesus is the Passover lamb. He died for our sins. I'm not really sure what the problem with making the strong connection with the sacrificial system as typology of what Jesus did and is doing and will do. I guess I don't believe in penal substitutionary atonement because I don't believe it was like a legal payment in the sense that like a Calvinist would, but it's a redemption of something in the death and resurrection of Jesus, his priesthood in heaven, which is actively ongoing, saving people, and that connection is changing them morally. So the one-time death of Jesus once for all and his high priestly work justifies us before God and is actively changing us. So it's literally making a change in how we relate to others and God. I think it makes sense to say the other goat is the banishing of sin, which is the influence of evil around God's people or in the world. So to me, it makes total sense to think of Jesus as the high priest who died, he was that offering sacrifice. That's what Hebrews says. He is the blood sacrifice for Yahweh. He is that sacrificial offering that was taken into the holy place. That's what Hebrews teaches. But then it says he's also the living high priest now forever. And that high priest is the one who transfers the sin away from holy ground into the wilderness, which is that's a future 1,000-year event. I think the earth is the wilderness that Satan's bound to for 1,000 years. And then he's finally destroyed at the end of that. And that will be the final cleansing of God's creation once and for all. And that's the work of the high priest. It is a work of atonement, and it's by the high priest. That makes the more sense than any of the other models I hear. And people say I'm a heretic, I guess, or that I deny the atonement. It's like, no. Jesus is the sacrifice for Yahweh. Now he's the living forever high priest king, God, man. And he will do the final work of cleansing everything when he destroys evil and sin and the source of it forever at the end of the timeline, which is what Revelation says, which I think is at the end of the 1,000 years. I guess it depends on how seriously you take Revelation 20, but hey, as I think about that, okay, people are like, oh, that's what dumb people say. The millennium isn't a real thing. It's like, well, it says he raises the saints, and that's intimately connected to what the hope of the faith is. And it connects to literal narrative in the New Testament. And Revelation 20, explains out what's taught in the ministry of Jesus and in the epistles or the apostles in the New Testament text. So I don't see how you get away from saying Revelation 20 isn't teaching something, because it separates the resurrections. It talks about it explains final judgment at the end of the 1,000 years. It explains the redemption, which is the hope of the faith at the beginning of the 1,000 years. That's what Revelation 20 does. It parses out what isn't as clear in the teachings of Jesus' ministry on earth and what's recorded in the Bible. So I don't get how you really get out of that unless you just say it's all figurative, which obviously Revelation's figurative. I'm not a literalist, but It's like, and then you look at Hebrews and it's like, and you look at the typology of the way Revelation is structured. It's him going through the temple into the sanctuary, the lampstands, the showbread, the cleansing of the laver, and then him entering into the most holy place where God's throne is, doing intercession, active, ongoing thing, because Jesus hasn't come back and finished the work yet. And it's like, well, what does he do? Well, what was the ritual? Well, there was a blood sacrifice for Yahweh, or there's a sacrifice for Yahweh that did cleanse the sins of the people. This is how I understand it anyways. I don't think it's like penal substitution, but it does look, it is the high, and this is mentioned in Hebrews, the high priest had to kill a bull for his own sins. That's a sin offering. And then he does the thing when all the people are in repentant, I forget the wording there. Someone can help me, right? But the people are supposed to be like repentant basically on the Day of Atonement, that whole time period. And then the high priest goes into the presence of God and removes. It's like, yeah, that's the ritual is for cleansing objects, like they were talking about in Amber's stream, which is cool. And I agree with a lot of the things they're saying. I would just say, I guess Adventists would take that Day of Atonement and how there was daily sacrifices ongoing throughout the year, morning and evening, and then on the Day of Atonement, that was like the final thing. And this is where Adventists get in trouble, because someone asked me today, I was talking to a friend, and they're like, do you deny the atonement on the cross? And I deny it. It's like, it's hard to explain, because it's like, you can read Adventist theology. It's like, we believe in a finished atonement and an active ongoing atonement that ends at the end of the time. So we think the Day of Atonement was represented by Jesus' sacrifice, and then active ongoing until his second coming, which is cleansing everything. I mean, because we're still stuck in sin, right? So, yeah, at one meant, but obviously it would be atrocious to say, I hear that from the pulpit too, Kelvy, by the way. We say that, right? That we believe that Jesus paid it all. Jesus is, it is finished. People used to preach tetelestai from the pulpits growing up. I heard that. Oh, but do you really mean it? Well, I don't know. Do you really mean it is finished? In what way? Has Jesus ridded the world of sin yet? Because I believe when it's finished in that sense, we won't sin anymore, and there won't be any influence of sin anymore. Is that, I mean, I could argue that to say it's finished totally would be like saying well, I guess a lot of people do think God's going to perpetuate sin forever. That's what eternal conscious torment is. Which, if I'm honest, as I've said before, I mean, think why if you think, okay, you don't think it's ever going to be finished, because you think people are going to be sinning against God forever in pagan dualism hell, like that's atrocious to me. It's also atrocious to say it is finished in some way that you're saying I'm denying it. It's like, well, I still sin. I still die. My friends are still dead. So it's not finished in that way. I guess you're trying to say I'm denying it. I mean, come on, let's be a little more honest here. Most people too that are modern Christians, they say it is finished, but they don't even believe that Jesus died in the 70 weeks. I believe Jesus fulfilled. He died, and that's what brought the new covenant. In Daniel's 70th week, everybody else says, well, did he really put an end to sin? Did he really bring in everlasting righteousness? Well, yes, in the sense that he achieved it as a human for us. But that's what people will say to me when I say, well, you're saying the 70th week is in the future? The Antichrist is going to fulfill it? I actually believe Jesus did accomplish the things listed in Daniel 9:24 and brought the new covenant by doing so in Daniel 9:27. So the same people that'll say Adventists don't believe the atonement is finished, well, the part where Jesus brings the new covenant and offers way into the most holy place by his sacrifice and redemption of human mortality, and he's won the victory, I believe that. I just don't believe he's fully redeemed us yet, or given us our immortal bodies yet, or banished sin and destroyed the evil forever yet, which I guess some people think that's never going to happen. I think that's blasphemy. But anyways, I just felt like, because it's the beauty of the internet. I can just jump on and say a bunch of dumb stuff, I guess. But anyway, is it finished? The sacrifice that was needed to redeem man so that we can have glorified bodies and live forever in God's presence is finished, yes. Is it finished that God has destroyed evil like he's promised to do when he says, you'll look for evil people and you won't find them? And then when you look for a place where they are, like the dwelling place of evil people, you won't find that either because it won't be anymore. So sorry, eternal conscious torment. That's blasphemy. The Bible says you'll look for evil and you won't find it. Evil people, you won't find them. Yeah, but God put them somewhere. Nope. You'll look for their place and you won't find it. You know why? Because it won't be anymore. Game over. Satan will not be anymore forever. He'll be ashes under my feet, and I'll be a fat cow forever, and you can't stop me.